It's been the number one economic challenge for the government and for the country, and there's been a lot of people doing it tough over the last. The government introducing 2 more top-up tax cuts, taking the average cut for a taxpayer to $2,500 over the next couple of years. Tamil, of course, is the world's oldest still living spoken and written language anywhere in the world. And I visit regularly the language schools. I hand out the certificates to those students who go on and complete Year 12. So nuclear energy is the most expensive form of new power. Peter Dutton and the Liberals' risky nuclear reactors will cost up to $600 billion. The government, Labor, has managed the budget properly. We've delivered the first 2 surplus budgets that the country has seen for nearly 20 years, something the Liberals talked about for a decade in office, but never actually did. For the last 20 years, to be frank, our country has not built enough houses. That's the problem.
தேர்தல் களம் 2025 உங்களை சந்திப்பதில் பெருமகிழ்ச்சி அடைகிறேன். நான் உங்கள் சரண்யா பாலகிருஷ்ணன். 2025 மே 3ஆம் தேதி சனிக்கிழமை நடக்க இருக்கும் ஃபெடரல் எலெக்ஷன், இது சம்பந்தமாக இன்னைக்கு நம்ம சந்திக்க இருக்கக்கூடிய நபர் ஜூலியன் ஹில். ஜூலியன் ஹில் வந்து ஃபெடரல் மெம்பர் ஃபார் ப்ரூஸ் அண்ட் அசிஸ்டன்ட் மினிஸ்டர் ஃபார் சிட்டிசன்ஷிப் அண்ட் மல்டிகல்ச்சரல் அஃபேர்ஸ். ஸோ இன்னைக்கு இவரை நம்ம சந்திக்க போகிறோம். தேர்தல் சம்பந்தப்பட்ட அறிக்கைகள் மற்றும் அவங்களுடைய திட்டங்களை இன்னைக்கு நம்ம கேட்டு தெரிஞ்சுக்கலாம் வாங்க. Good evening, Julian Hill. Thank you so much for being here today in your busy schedule.
Welcome. It is good to be with you.
That's fantastic start for the evening. So I pitch in my first question straight away. Yeah. So what action has Labor taken to address the cost of living crisis? Yeah.
It's been the number one economic challenge for the government and for the country, and there's been a lot of people doing it tough over the last 2.5 years. Okay. One of the things in coming to government is you have to deal with reality as you find it. It might not be the hand of cards that you wanted to be dealt, but the government's tried to help people through the cost of living pressures while getting inflation down. I'll just give you a little bit of context.
Yeah.
When we came to office, inflation, the rate that prices were rising, was over 6% and peaked soon after at 8%. To be fair to the former government, much of that was global inflation that every country experienced post-COVID and Russia's illegal war in Ukraine. Some of it, though, was because of bad mistakes that Scott Morrison and Peter Dutton and the Liberals made in government, throwing too much cash at people in the economy, which pushes inflation up, and the Reserve Bank leaving interest rates too low for too long, so people go and borrow lots of cheap money, which pushes inflation up. Yeah. What the government's tried to do is help people. So we've done tax cuts for every taxpayer, power bill rebates for every household and small businesses, cheaper childcare, free TAFE, cheaper medicines, the first cuts to medicine prices in Australia for 75 years, and more GP bulk billing. So things like that actually take the pressure off and help people while inflation comes down. We have had to be careful not to just throw so much cash at people that you actually push interest rates and inflation up more. And 3 years on, things are heading in the right direction. Inflation is now down under 3%. Wages are rising again in this country faster than inflation. Debt forecasts for Australia, the government debt, are $207 billion lower than when Labor was elected. We've delivered the first 2 surplus budgets that the country's seen in nearly 20 years, and interest rates have started to fall. So, in summary, it has been a tough time for many people. The government has tried to help people, and at every single point, Peter Dutton and the Liberals voted against helping. Peter Dutton says one thing in the community and on television, but when he goes to Canberra, he's voted against the tax cuts. He's voted against power rebates. He's voted against free TAFE. He's not supported Labor's work on GP bulk billing. And so there is a very clear choice this election. Do we build on these foundations of a stronger economy and a positive future, or go backwards with Dutton and the Liberals?
Yeah, got it. What action will a re-elected Labor government take to further reduce the cost of living?
So, as I said, I'll give you an example. Yeah. The last 2 weeks ago in Parliament, when the Prime Minister and Treasurer introduced the budget, we had the astounding spectacle of the government introducing 2 more top-up tax cuts, taking the average cut for a taxpayer to $2,500 over the next couple of years. And Peter Dutton and the Liberals voted against the tax cut.
Yeah.
So that's one that's front and centre. It's a very clear choice. If Peter Dutton's elected, he's actually said he will raise income taxes for every Australian. I've never seen anything like it in my time in the Parliament, nearly a decade, but that's what he did. It's not my words. The television recorded it. That's what the Liberals said they'll do, is raise your taxes.
Yeah. So can you explain how the Liberals' current policies, example, nuclear fuel excise cut, would actually increase the cost of Australian families, and what alternatives is Labor proposing?
So nuclear energy is the most expensive form of new power. Peter Dutton and the Liberals' risky nuclear reactors will cost up to $600 billion. So the party that say they believe in free market are actually proposing to spend $600 billion of taxpayer money to build risky nuclear reactors 20 years from now, which will push up the cost of power, push up average energy bills by up to $1,200. Australia, as a country, we have the best renewable energy resources, sun, wind, of any developed country in the world.
Yep.
Of any of the 37 OECD developed countries, Australia has the best renewable energy resources. And so Labor's plan is about putting downwards pressure on power bills by introducing more supply. The key to downwards pressure on power bills is more energy coming online, and renewables are the cheapest form of new power. But it's not renewables only. It's with gas, it's with pumped hydro, and of course with battery storage. So there's a very clear choice. Only last week, though, we found out that Peter Dutton's costings for his risky nuclear reactors are wrong. He hasn't even included any costs for storing and disposing of nuclear waste. There's no answers to how this waste will be transported across the country through communities, but we know from similar countries it's nearly $500 million a year to transport and store this high-level radioactive waste. No one can believe his costings. It's not a real policy, and some of the former Liberal ministers have said it's not a real policy. It's a policy designed to try and shut up the Liberal party room that doesn't believe in science and doesn't believe in clean, renewable energy.
Yeah, got it. That one is inflation and interest rate. Now, how has the Labor responsible budget management lowered inflation from about 6% at 2022 election to the current figure of roughly 2.4%?
A good question. And as I said, it's been tough for many people, but inflation is now down under 3%, which is why the Reserve Bank has started cutting interest rates and interest rates coming down. But it's no accident, right? This doesn't just happen. The government, Labor, has managed the budget properly. We've delivered the first 2 surplus budgets that the country has seen for nearly 20 years, something the Liberals talked about for a decade in office, but never actually did. What that's done has helped the Reserve Bank with interest rates to put downwards pressure on inflation, taking some heat out of the economy while price rises moderate, which has now allowed space for the Reserve Bank to cut interest rates. But we've made tough decisions. And I'll contrast it. In Scott Morrison's last budget, when the Liberals were in office, this is what the budget papers said. There was not one single dollar of savings. Not one. All the Liberals did was spend. Fuel tax cuts, tax offsets, chasing to buy votes, but they actually pushed inflation and interest rates up. What the government has done is identify nearly $100 billion of savings in the budget that we could reinvest in our election commitments, in investing in aged care, in Medicare, in infrastructure that's needed, but also deliver surpluses. So Australia's done well economically. Unemployment is at the lowest average that the country's seen for nearly 50 years. And so that extra money that the government's received from income taxes, from corporate taxes, from mining royalties, we haven't just spent, we've returned to the budget to help get inflation and interest rates down.
Yeah, got it, yeah. So how is Labor working to increase Australia's housing supply?
It's the core question. For the last 20 years, to be frank, our country has not built enough houses. That's the problem in the housing market. And when you don't have enough supply, it puts upwards pressure on prices. The Reserve Bank also admitted that they kept interest rates too low for too long after COVID and the global crisis, which also has helped push up housing. So it's a complicated picture.
Okay.
But now interest rates are coming down, wages are growing, which is helping with housing affordability, but there's a lot more to do. It's been a tough time for prospective first-home buyers as well as renters and mortgage holders. The government is coming at this while inflation has come down from every possible angle, both to get more houses built with an ambitious goal of 1.2 million houses, including at least 55,000 social housing units through various funding sources, but also well-crafted schemes to help people get into the housing market. So the first home super saver scheme, giving tax advantages to people saving for their house deposit, a 5% house deposit, has helped nearly 100,000 people into first home ownership, saving an average of $15,000. Labor's new Help to Buy scheme, which will start later this year. Unfortunately, the Greens political party and the Liberal Party blocked that legislation in the Senate for over a year, or it would have already started. But that will help tens of thousands more people to get into the housing market, where the government will take an equity stake with deposits as low as 2%. So again, that's something that will help. But I won't go through every part. I'd encourage people to have a look at the policies. But there's no single magic solution to the housing problem. We need to build more houses. We need sensible mechanisms to help people into the housing market. Remember also, migration is now falling because of the government's policies, taking a little bit of demand pressure off, particularly as international student numbers come down and return to more normal levels. But there's one big risk, and that's Peter Dutton. This is probably the dumbest housing policy you could ever design, right? Just so everyone's really clear. This would win the gold medal for stupid housing policies, is the idea of letting people take their superannuation to put on a house deposit. Now, it sounds nice. Sounds kind of attractive because a lot of young people go, well, it's my money. I'd like to buy a house. But your viewers are not silly. Think about it like this. If 4 young people turn up to an auction and everyone's got an extra $50,000 in their pocket, what's going to happen? They're going to bid up the cost of the houses. So the economists tell us that letting people use superannuation for housing would push up the cost of housing by an average of 9% in capital city markets. You don't make housing more affordable by making it more expensive. The only winners from this policy would be the guy selling the house. Young Australians would be paying more for housing and trash their retirement savings. It is a really stupid policy.
So how is Labor making it easier for first home buyers to get into the housing market?
Well, I'll give you those 2 good examples. The Help to Buy scheme, which will see first home buyers save an average of $150,000 on their mortgage through government taking a part of an equity stake in the house with deposits as low as 2%. And the Home Guarantee scheme, which allows people to save for their home, which has helped over 100,000 people into the housing market already, saving an average of $15,000. So there's a number of practical schemes. We'll continue to have more to say about housing, but there's a clear difference. Labor wants to build more houses. We're seeing migration come down, but not doing stupid policies like the Liberals' home super scheme, using super for housing. The other thing I'd just note, as part of taking demand off, Labor's also, from April this year, has banned temporary residents from being able to, and foreign investors from being able to purchase homes in Australia, just to take a bit of demand pressure off while we start building more houses. And the final thing in building more houses, which is important for first home buyers because it creates choice, is getting more young Australians into the construction sector and more skilled migrants quickly who are construction workers. So we've broadened through the skilled migration program the construction workers and trades. We've done free TAFE, and we've announced a $10,000 construction apprentice incentive scheme through payments to help encourage young Australians and support them who want to choose a career in construction to get more workers in so we can build more houses.
Yeah, that's a good one. So what risk does the Liberal super for housing policy pose for the home ownership and house price?
Well, I think I've addressed that, and
Yep.
you couldn't say it often enough, though. There's a reason that Malcolm Turnbull, the former finance minister of the Liberals, Matthias Cormann, when he was there, and even Scott Morrison until he panicked before the last election, all of the Liberals acknowledged, the former sensible Liberal prime ministers and treasurers, that using your superannuation for housing was a really dumb policy, because all it would do was, it'd be like putting a vacuum cleaner in your super fund and sucking the cash out into the pocket of the guy selling the house. It just pushes up house prices while trashing your retirement savings.
Can you explain the history of Medicare, why Labor created it, and why the Liberal have always opposed it?
So Medicare didn't just fall out of the sky one day. We didn't just wake up and go, oh, look, we have a Medicare card and a universal health system. Medicare is something that the Labor Party and the Labor movement fought for decades, through the 1960s and the 1970s, to embed that basic principle that it should be your Medicare card, not your credit card or your bank balance, that determines whether you can see the doctor and get good health care. To determine whether, Peter Dutton's mate, Gina Reinhardt, the richest person in Australia, whether she can get the same medical care that someone who has an emergency in Dandenong can get at the hospital. And, we fought for it in the 1970s, but it was Bob Hawke's Labor government finally that was elected that introduced Medicare back in the early 1980s. The Liberals have never supported Medicare. They used to call it socialised medicine and say it was an outrageous waste of money, that bulk billing rates were too high. In fact, they went to the 1984 election, the 1987 election, the 1990 election promising to abolish Medicare, until they worked out that you couldn't win an election in Australia anymore without at least pretending to support Medicare. So I'll give you this example. When Medicare was introduced, or before Medicare was introduced, the leading cause of bankruptcy in Australia, people literally going bankrupt and losing their houses, was to pay medical bills. So imagine before Medicare, if you were just a low-income family and one of your family members got a serious illness, the choice you faced then in Australia was to sell your house, sell your possessions, and try and save the life of your loved one and pay the medical bills. So Labor's always believed in universal health. What we saw with Peter Dutton, when he was the health minister under Tony Abbott, he was voted by Australian doctors as the worst health minister in 40 years, because he literally tried to destroy bulk billing by introducing a charge for every Australian to see the GP and cut $50 billion from Australian public hospitals.
So, how will Labor address workers' shortages in health sector, and why does Peter Dutton pose such a huge risk to Medicare and the health sector?
So it's a really important question, because what we saw over the last 10 years under the Liberals was fewer young doctors choosing to become GPs. And that's caused a crisis in the public health system. Your GP practice, primary health care, is your first line of defence, because what you want is that when someone first feels unwell or gets sick or has an accident, that they go straight to their GP and get treated as quickly and early as possible, because that stops conditions getting worse, it stops people getting sicker, and then they're more expensive to treat or indeed risk their own lives. And so what the Liberals did by freezing the amount that GPs were paid to see patients led to the decline in bulk billing rates that we inherited when we came into government. So I'm proud of the work we've done in our first term to reverse that decline. But the proposition, the policy that the Prime Minister's put forward now for our next term of government is to restore GP bulk billing, that promise that every Australian should be able to see a GP for free. So by extending what they call the bulk billing incentive, that's the amount that a GP is paid if they bulk bill a patient, to every Australian, as well as an extra payment every quarter. If a doctor's practice decides to go 100% bulk billing, then they get an extra payment on top. So our modelling indicates that within the next few years, at least 9 out of 10 visits to a GP should be fully bulk billed with no charge to the patient.
Yeah. And the other one, Peter Dutton posed such a huge risk to Medicare and the health sector.
Well, as I said, Peter Dutton and the Liberals have never really believed in Medicare. I mean, you can see he copied Labor's commitment within a few hours of us making it without even seeing the detail. if anyone believes that Peter Dutton and the Liberals will protect Medicare, will invest in Medicare, will make it free to see a doctor, then they would literally believe anything.
Yeah.
I'll give you this point. There's one thing I do agree with Peter Dutton on. He said a week or two ago, don't look at what someone says, look at what their record is, look at what they've actually done. And I agree with him. And when you look at Peter Dutton's record, I say to your viewers and to Australians, don't listen to what Peter Dutton says on the eve of an election. Look at what he's done for the last 20 years as a politician, as a senior person on the Liberal side of politics. They've never truly supported Medicare.
Yeah. So, given that the electorate of Bruce is home to one of the most diverse populations in Australia, including a growing Tamil community, how do you envision the Tamil community contributing to Australia's multicultural fabric? Additionally, what measures is the government taking to support their cultural, social and educational development?
So, I am really proud to represent a vibrant and fast-growing Tamil community. Of course, Tamils from Sri Lanka, but from India, from Fiji, from Malaysia, from Singapore, from many parts of the world. And Australians from different cultural backgrounds, Tamil Australians, they actually want the same things as every other Australian. They want a safe community, they want a house, they want a better life for their kids through education, they want a good healthcare system, they want a strong economy, they want to be able to get a job and pursue their aspirations. That's important. But of course, Australians from Tamil heritage also want to be able to preserve language, to preserve cultural traditions, and that's something that I, as the Minister, am really proud to support. The government has been investing in grassroots organisations. We support community language schools. Tamil, of course, is the world's oldest still living spoken and written language anywhere in the world. And I visit regularly the language schools. I hand out the certificates to those students who go on and complete Year 12. So Labor will always support the Australian Tamil community to pursue the entire diversity of life options. We see Australians of Tamil heritage in law, in business, in the arts, in media, in politics, and that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah. So one last question. So will there be any opportunity for Tamil to be introduced as an additional language option in the school curriculum? Additionally, what steps will be taken in the future to support the Tamil community in this regard?
So it's a really, really good question. And Australia, look, English is our common language. We say, and we all know in this modern age, that you need good English to be able to succeed in professional workplaces. We're a highly skilled economy, and English is our common language. But we are enriched because of the diversity of languages that Australians speak. We need more bilingual and multilingual Australians. And in terms of supporting that, curriculum under our constitution sits with state and territory governments, not the Commonwealth government. We encourage state and territory governments to identify where they think that they can deliver a language to do that. I know Tamil is a language that I think they still teach through the Victorian language schools, but I give a particular shout out to the community language schools. It's something that I've been talking with community language schools about, and we'd like to do, if re-elected, look further at what we can do to support those community language schools that take students through to Year 12. Because it's never going to be possible to teach every language through the official government school system, because you just don't get a critical mass of students to make it viable, you don't find enough teachers and so on. But the community language schools can play a critical part. And for a lot of schools, some of them do go through to Year 12. That's great. We should be encouraging and rewarding that. But for some community language schools, they tend to taper off at kind of Year 8, 9 or 10. So what we can do to support those schools to then take students through to Year 12, I think may be part of the answer, where it might not be viable to teach as widely in most state and territory schools.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for your wonderful time today.
Thank
and
you.
Wishing you all the best for this election.
Thank you very much.
We'll meet you soon again.
Thank you.
Thank you.